Long ago I was a prince. Aeneas they called me, son of Anchises, grandson of Ilus. Blood of Troy's first kings ran through my veins, and through my mother Aphrodite, goddess of love and ruin, I was both blessed and cursed. I was not born for war, I was born for legacy. And yet, war became all I knew. They tell the tale of Troy in marble and in song. Bards sing of Paris and Helen, of Achilles and Hector, of the rage of men and the will of gods. But what they never tell you, what they cannot tell you, is what it felt like at the very end. Not the clamor of glory, but the stillness before death. I was there. I saw it all, not as a myth, but as a man who lost everything. The siege lasted 10 years, 10 winters of frozen silence, 10 summers where flies feasted on the fallen. The walls of Troy, once proud and gold-lit, grew stained and tired. We were starving. Our gardens turned to graveyards. The palace echoed with the hollow footsteps of priests, with no gods left to answer. And yet, we endured. Every day we rose, unsure if the sun would set with us, still breathing. Every night we prayed to the stars, wondering which of us would not see morning. Children no longer remembered peace. Young boys became warriors before they became men. Old men counted the days by funerals, and mothers dug graves for sons too young to speak. And then, one morning, the noise stopped. We awoke to silence. No Greek horns echoing from the hills. No clatter of shields. No war chants rolling over the earth like thunder. Just the sound of wind. Something was wrong. I remember walking the walls, staring out at the horizon. The sea glittered in the morning light, but it was empty. Gone. The Greek ships were gone, their camp abandoned, silent like a tomb. Ashes where their fires once roared, smashed amphorae, broken carts, half-buried armor. It was as if the earth had swallowed them whole. Disbelief turned to euphoria. Some wept, others laughed. They've given up, we shouted. They've surrendered. Troy has won. But not all of us believed it. The priests murmured of omens. The winds felt too still. The silence was too perfect. And then we saw it. At the gates of our city, left behind like a gift, stood a monument. A horse. Not just a wooden statue, but a colossus. Tall as a watchtower, carved with exquisite care, its flanks curved and smooth, its head noble, its eyes hollow. Sacred pine, they said, timber taken from Mount Ida itself, a peace offering to Athena, left behind by a defeated army. It felt too perfect. Laocoon, priest of Poseidon, stepped forward, his face pale, his fingers trembling. "This is no offering," he cried. "This is deception. This is war in disguise." And then, for the first time in decades, he raised a spear and hurled it into the belly of the horse. Wood groaned, not cracked, groaned, like something moved inside. We froze. Some whispered, others glanced at each other nervously. But the spell of hope was already upon us. Then came Cassandra. Poor, cursed Cassandra, gifted with prophecy, doomed never to be believed. She screamed from the temple steps, burn it now." The gods whisper death. I see fire in our streets, blood on the altars. But the people turned from her, as they always had. The elders debated. Some said it was a trap. Others feared angering the gods if we rejected a sacred offering. In the end, our pride chose for us. We opened the gates, not to armies, but to ruin. With ropes and wheels, cheers and sweat, we dragged the horse into our city. The streets seemed filled with celebration. Musicians played, children danced around it with garlands of laurel. Torches flickered like stars. The people laughed. That night, we held a feast. We lit fires. We poured wine. We sang the old songs. For the first time in 10 years, we allowed ourselves to believe. We believed it was over, that peace had returned, that the gods had smiled upon us once more. But as the fires died and the city slept, the horse stood in our square, watching, and inside, within its hollow chest, warriors waited, silent as shadows, breath held, blades ready. We thought the nightmare had ended, but in truth, it was only just beginning. Sleep came like a thief that night, not because we were at peace, but because we were exhausted. 10 years of war had wrung us dry. We were too tired to be cautious, too desperate to question a miracle. The wine dulled our doubts. The music muffled Cassandra's screams. And high above, in the stillness of Troy's towers, I stood with my son Ascanius, watching the great wooden horse loom over the city square. Even then, a whisper in my chest told me something was wrong. Not fear, something worse. A silence that didn't belong. The kind of silence before a thunderclap. But down below, the people rejoiced. They danced in torchlight. They offered prayers to gods who had long since stopped answering. The scent of roasting lamb filled the air. The courtyards echoed with laughter. I should have left, taken my family, fled into the hills. But how do you abandon your city, your blood, your honor, on a hunch? So I stayed, and in the darkest hours of night, when the last flute fell silent and even the hearths had dimmed, it began. A quiet click, like a latch undone, then another. Wood shifted, metal scraped. From the belly of the horse they emerged, one by one, Greek soldiers, dozens of them, hand-picked, silent, merciless. Odysseus led them, clever, cold-eyed Odysseus, whose mind was sharper than any blade. He had conceived the deception, and now he delivered its final blow. They dropped from the horse into the heart of Troy, and all around the city, fires lit the horizon. You see, the ships had never left. They had only hidden behind the nearby island of Tenedos, waiting for nightfall. While we feasted, they returned. While we slept, they crept ashore. And while the traders within opened the gates from inside, the Greek army flooded in. Our walls, those ancient golden walls, did not fall by siege or catapult. They were opened by our own hands. I remember waking to screams, not distant ones, close, inside the courtyard. My cousin burst through the door, blood soaking his tunic, eyes wide with horror. "They're here," he gasped before collapsing. I grabbed my sword, not out of strategy, out of instinct. I told my wife to take our son and hide deep in the inner chambers of the house. "Do not come out," I said, "no matter what you hear." And then I ran into the night. Troy was burning. Flames licked the skies like serpents. Statues cracked and tumbled. Temples crumbled. The shrines of our gods lit up like funeral pyres. In the streets, chaos. Children crying. Horses stampeding. Warriors scrambling half-dressed from their homes to meet death in the alleys. And the Greeks, they moved like phantoms. Precision, fury, no mercy. I saw my friends die without a word. I saw soldiers who had fought for 10 years fall without ever drawing their blades. Hector's palace, once a monument to courage, was overrun. Priam, our king, our symbol of defiance. I found him in the temple, clutching the altar. He had laid his sword aside, thinking the gods would protect him there. Achilles' son, Neoptolemus, found him first. The boy was not like his father. He was worse. He did not kill Priam out of rage. He killed him out of joy. In that moment, I knew there would be no survivors. This was not conquest. It was erasure. Everything we were, every memory, every stone, every lineage, was being undone. I ran back through the alleys, dodging flames and falling stone. The sky was no longer dark. It was red and gold and screaming. When I reached my home, it was already in flames. I shouted for my wife. No answer. I fought my way inside, and in the farthest room, in the smoke and heat, I found them, alive. She clutched Ascanius close, her face streaked with ash, her eyes clear and fierce. "We must go," I said. "No," she whispered. "You must." She pressed something into my hand, a small idol of our household god. "You must protect the bloodline." I don't remember what I said. I only remember holding her hand until she let go, and then running out of the city into the dark, with my father on my back, my son in my arms, and fire at my heels. We did not leave as heroes. We left as shadows, as dust, as the last breath of a city that no longer existed. I did not look back because I already knew what I'd see. The end of Troy and the beginning of something else. At dawn, the smoke had not cleared. It rose in black columns, swirling with embers, climbing into a sky too tired to weep. Troy was no longer a city. It was a graveyard of dreams, charred stone, broken idols, crimson streets. I moved through the wreckage like a ghost. Every step cracked something, bone, wood, memory. I held Ascanius close. He did not cry. He only looked, wide-eyed, silent. He was old enough to understand, and far too young to bear it. Behind us, my father, Anchises, leaned heavily on my shoulder, refusing to be left behind. His eyes were empty, not with fear, but with the weight of everything he'd lost. A man who once dined with kings now stumbled over the ruins of his people. We weren't alone. Others had survived, scattered, hiding, broken, women clutching children, priests dragging sacred relics, a handful of soldiers with nothing left to protect. We gathered like ash on the wind, drawn together by grief. not hope. Some whispered of revenge, some begged the gods, some simply stared at the burning towers, unable to look away. And then came the moment that haunts me most. We crossed the threshold of the city gates, those gates we had once defended with blood and fire. And as we passed through them, I realized we were not leaving Troy. Troy was leaving us. Because what is a city without its people, without its soul? The walls were only stone, the temples only timber. But the stories we carried, the names, the songs, the truths, those were Troy. And now we bore them into exile. Beyond the city, we found fields trampled by war, littered with shields and forgotten corpses. The Greeks had marched inland already, looting, hunting. We moved swiftly, taking forest paths, avoiding roads. I do not know how many days passed. Time had no meaning, only distance. Every fire we lit was small, every voice hushed. We shared what little food we had, slept in thickets, shivered under stars that looked down with indifferent light. Each night I told my son a story, not of gods or war, but of home, of fig trees in spring, of cool baths at dusk, of his mother's laughter. I kept her alive with words, and when he asked me, "Will we ever go back?" I did not lie. "No," I said, "but we will go forward." Because something had awakened in me, a purpose I did not ask for. Troy was dead, but Troy was not gone. As long as we lived, as long as we remembered, as long as we breathed the names of our ancestors into the wind, she endured. And if we could find new soil, new walls, new stars, we could build again, not just a city, but a future, one not born of vengeance or empire, but of survival. So I gathered those who remained, and we swore an oath. We would not scatter like sand, we would not vanish like smoke. We would carry Troy with us, in our bones, in our children, in the songs we would teach them. And one day, we would find the land the gods meant for us, a place where ruins would bloom again, and from fire rise something eternal. We sailed into uncertainty. The wind did not sing, it howled. The sea did not cradle us, it tested us. Each wave that crashed against our creaking ships seemed to ask the same question. Why do you still run, Trojan? But we did not stop. We were few, a flotilla of broken hearts, of wounded warriors and weeping widows. Our sails were patched, our rudders splintered, our souls hollowed, but we moved forward, because there was no backward. Behind us lay only ash. I stood at the helm with my son beside me, his small hand wrapped around mine. His eyes, once wide with innocence, now carried the shadows of 1,000 funeral pyres. We sought sanctuary, but the gods, it seemed, were not done with us. First, we found the land of Thrace. I thought it safe. The king there had once been our ally. I began to build an altar to offer thanks. Then we uncovered the ground, and beneath the soil, bodies, Trojan bodies, murdered by the very king we had trusted, their mouths still open in silent screams. Blood had soaked the earth so deep that the grass grew crimson. Even the gods turned away. We fled once more, carrying guilt like stones. Then to Delos, where the oracle gave us riddles. Seek the land of your ancestors, they said. My ancestors? Where did our blood begin? Crete? Too barren. Then to Strophides, where the harpies cursed our food, clawing at our ships, shrieking omens we could not unhear. You will reach your land, they spat, but only after hunger has made you wolves. And still, we sailed. Storms tore at our sails. Lightning split the sky, like Zeus himself wanted us sunk. At Actium, we made sacrifices. At Bethrodum, we saw Helenus, a fellow Trojan, now a king in exile. He welcomed us, fed us, and told me what I already feared. Italy, that was our fate. Not Asia, not Greece. Italy, a land I had never seen, but one the gods had marked for my descendants. But he also warned me, war awaited us there. A queen would burn, a warrior would rise, and I would lose someone I loved more than life. Prophecies, always wrapped in beauty and pain. Still, I led our people westward. We passed the straits of Scylla and Charybdis, where death waited on both sides. We passed the island of the Cyclopes, where monsters with one eye howled in the dark. We were not just running from ruin, we were becoming something new. Each challenge shaped us, each loss stripped us bare. We buried mothers, children, friends. But the spirit of Troy, of honor, of stubborn survival remained. In the nights, I looked at Ascanius as he slept beside the mast, wrapped in furs too thin for the wind. I whispered to the stars, let him see the land, let him know peace, let him build something better. And maybe that was why the gods spared us, not for who we were, but for who he might become. And so we sailed on, across the sea of sorrows, toward a future written in the salt and wind, toward destiny and sacrifice. We had crossed oceans. We had survived storms, betrayal, hunger, monsters. And when at last we found Carthage, her towers rising like a mirage from the North African shore, we believed, for a fleeting moment, that we had found peace. They called her Dido, the queen, strong, wise, radiant with sorrow. She had fled her own past, just as I had fled mine, and like me, she had built something from ashes. Her city was young, but fierce. Her people adored her, and she ruled not with cruelty, but with vision. She welcomed us, not as strangers, but as kin. In her palace of polished stone and amber, I stood before her court and told our tale, the fall of Troy, the burning walls, the death of Priam, the screams of our children. And she listened. No ruler ever did as she did. No queen had eyes like hers, so full of fire and grief. We lingered. Days became weeks. She asked of the gods, of fate, of love, and in the hush of the Carthaginian nights, I began to forget. Forget the cold sea. Forget the blood of Troy. Forget even the voice of destiny that whispered to me in dreams. She and I, we were alike, two broken monarchs trying to shape something from ruin. And for a time, we were whole. She took me into her bed. She called me husband, though no rights had bound us. Her people rejoiced. The builders stopped. The ship sat idle. Even my son smiled. But the gods had not brought me across oceans to fall in love. They had brought me to found a future. And Jupiter, king of Olympus, sent Mercury, the winged messenger, to remind me. I saw him in a flash of gold, standing on the shore. He did not speak with anger, but with certainty. Leave, he said, now. Your fate lies in Italy. Your son shall rule empires. Dido is not your destiny. She is your detour. I staggered back. I felt torn in two. To leave her was to wound her. To stay was to betray the gods. And so I chose duty over desire, but I did not tell her. We prepared the ships in secret. My men, though reluctant, understood. The stars above pointed west. The winds shifted. She found out before we left. Oh, how she wept, how she raged. I saved you, she cried. I gave you my home, my heart. And I could say nothing. She stood on the walls of Carthage, her robe torn, her eyes wild. She cursed me. She cursed my people, and she swore that her descendants would never forgive mine. You will build your empire, she said, but it will be soaked in sorrow. Then, as dawn broke, she climbed to the pyre she had built from our shared belongings. And there, before the gods, before her people, she fell upon her sword. Her scream echoed through the harbor like a war cry from the underworld. And as our ships sailed west, fire lit the sky behind us. A city of promise reduced to ash. Again, I did not speak for days. Her voice haunted the winds. And I knew then, destiny does not come without blood. Even love must burn, if fate demands it. And mine did, because Italy still waited. And I had a kingdom to build, no matter the cost. We reached Italy under a blood-colored sky. The winds had not been kind, nor the omens. My men were weary. The sea had claimed many. Others had turned back or fallen ill, but I carried them forward because the gods willed it, because Troy was gone, and yet, not forgotten. Each step on Italian soil felt like a trespass. This land, fated to be ours, did not welcome us. The trees whispered in strange tongues, the rivers seemed to murmur curses, and the people, those who ruled here, looked at us not as heirs to greatness, but as invaders. The Latins were proud. Their king, Latinus, was old but wise. When he heard the words of our prophecy, when he learned of my Trojan blood, he offered peace and his daughter's hand in marriage. Lavinia, her name was. She did not smile. She did not resist. She, too, was a pawn of destiny. But not everyone welcomed the alliance, for another man had claimed her heart, or at least her hand, Turnus, prince of the Rutulians, a warrior, a leader, a storm of pride wrapped in bronze. To him I was not a guest. I was not a suitor. I was a thief. He roused the tribes against us. Spears were raised. Horns were blown. And once more, the world burned. I had not wanted war. The ashes of Troy still clung to my skin, but the gods whispered again. You are not just a refugee, they said. You are the seed of an empire. And so I fought. We clashed in forests and fields. Blood soaked the earth where grain once grew. I lost comrades, faithful souls who had followed me across the known world. Pallas, young and noble, died by Turnus's blade. I held his body and knew peace would not come with mercy. It would come with fire. And so it was that I faced Turnus in single combat, beneath the gaze of gods and ghosts. He was fierce. He moved like a tempest. But I carried 10 years of loss in every strike. The screams of Troy, the burning of Carthage, the weight of my son's future. Turnus fell, and as he knelt before me, wounded, broken, he begged for his life. I saw his mother in his eyes. I saw the man he could have been. And for a moment, I hesitated. But then I looked down and saw Pallas's sword belt hanging from his waist. The boy's final gift, stolen by the one who killed him. And in that instant, mercy died. My blade pierced his heart. Turnus gasped once, and then fell into silence. The war ended, but peace came slowly. We built a new city. We named it Lavinium, after the bride fate gave me. The people mingled. The blood of Trojans and Latins became one. And from our children came kings. From kings came empires. One day, the line of Aeneas would rise again in marble and iron. A she-wolf would nurse twins by the Tiber, and a city called Rome would rise, an empire of laws and roads, of armies and gods, of ambition and ruin. But that is not my story. My story is one of fire and flight, of duty over desire, of a city lost and a future won. I am Aeneas, prince of nothing, father of everything. And when the bards sing of Troy, let them remember, it did not end in fire alone. It became the fire that lit the world.